Okay.
You are not working for Canada. You are working for your globalist partners. I wonder how much they're paying you to betray Canada. What do we do with traitors in Canada, Mr. Trudeau? We used to hang them for treason. And you're doing that very same thing to us now.
Okay.
Famous two Randys.
Minister, is it possible for Canada to meet the 2030 emissions targets without a carbon tax? Yes or no?
Well, listen, theoretically, that would require investments of billions and billions of dollars, which we cannot achieve through tax measures. That has to be achieved by way of investments and so on.
How many blows can one leader or one party take?
Trudeau has done unbelievable damage to Canada over the last 9 years. Every Canadian has almost a moral obligation, regardless of where they come from or what their religion is or what party they're associated with, to get rid of this man.
Why are we in a situation where we need all of these programs? Why are seniors who spent their entire lives contributing to taxes, working hard for their money, why are they in a position where they have so little that they need government help? These are people who contributed their entire lives. And for what? Because they clearly have not been able to reap the reward of their hard work, that dream, that promise that all of us had. You can't enjoy retirement, can you? When you are struggling so bad due to the policies of this government who put you in this place solely to then go, oh, well, we're going to be your savior. We're your false prophet. Here, we're going to keep screwing up the financial situation, because then if we do enough and you guys are weak enough and you have no hope left, you won't need to look to anybody or anything else. You will be pushed so deep inside of that hole that all you will have is us. So ask yourself, why are we in this place to begin with? And do you want to stay here?
There are between 20,000 and 500,000 people in Canada illegally. 20,000 to 500,000. They don't know. And they say there could be more.
My name is Randy Boston. I'm the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance, but I'm also known as Strong Eagle Man in the Cree community.
Everyone thinks everything is broken because he's busy breaking it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's been Prime Minister for 9 years.
Woke has to stop, because along with everything else, it's destroying our country. We're going to stop woke. Woke is bullshit.
Mr. Boissonnault, you said today that you came to the term non-status adopted Cree through consultation with an Indigenous researcher. What was the name of that researcher?
I met with Chad Cowie, who was a student.
Thank you very much. We know. Thank you. We know who Mr. Cowie is, Professor Cowie is. In an interview with the National Post, Professor Cowie denied your version of events. The National Post quotes him as saying, "I would not say that I gave him the term that he was non-status adopted Cree." Did Professor Cowie tell the truth to the National Post, and do you now want to correct your opening statement?
My opening statement was very clear, Mr. Genuous. I said that I chose the term non-status adopted Cree after having a conversation with Mr. Cowie.
Okay. So now it's clear that it was. So you sat down with Professor Cowie, and he gave you some advice. You ignored that advice and came up with this term independently on your own, and then you came back to committee and said, well, in the context of conversation, I came up with this term. Frankly, that's what we've come to expect from you, Mr. Boissonnault, but I think it's now further revelation of what we have come to expect.
Then we know that there are 30,000 people who've been ordered deported that have not left. We know that for sure. Trudeau has lost control of our immigration.
How do you get control?
I will take back control. First of all, we will track down the 30,000 people who've been ordered deported, and I will have them deported from this country. They've been ordered deported. These are people who are not eligible to be here. We will find them and we will deport them.
Do you have the resources for that?
We do. We just have to direct them to the front lines rather than the back office bureaucracies. Secondly, we will have a rapid approach to treating these new and mostly false refugee claims. For example, I think we should signal that there will be what I call a last in, first out. So people who submit claims now because they're frankly international students who want to stay, they're not real refugees, they're not bad people, but they're using the refugee system to try and stay. We have to treat their case immediately so they know that it's not worth it. We have to secure the border so there's no more people coming in illegally and then staying the 14 days necessary in order to be eligible for a refugee application that can take years. We have to stop them from coming in the first place. And then we have to set numbers for immigration that our economy, our housing market, and our healthcare system can absorb. So that means reducing the number.
And I know a lot about this because I knew Chrystia Freeland when she, was a journalist at the Financial Times, whose name shall forever live in infamy for employing her. And I remember even then thinking, this woman is not bright at all. But boy, does she have high self-esteem. I don't think I've ever even seen it's off this, I don't know what the self-esteem measurement scale is, the Richter scale. But her self-esteem was literally unassailable. It was bomb-proof. If a nuclear bomb dropped on your town, you could hide beneath Chrystia Freeland's self-esteem and live. There's like nothing you could do to shake it. Nothing. No amount of evidence of her stupidity and wrong decisions and idiotic views could dissuade her from the core belief that she was awesome and you were not. So I guess I shouldn't be totally shocked that she's helping to run and destroy your country. But she's doing it in her signature way. She's not getting on the CBC, her media outlet, which like almost all outlets in this wonderful oppressed country is run by the government. It's all state media. It's Albania 1985. And I'm sure we have people whose families were refugees from Albania. Welcome, and you know what I'm talking about. But at least you could say of the Albanian leader in 1985, Enver Hoxha, that when he went full fascist, he just didn't mince words. Shut up and obey or we'll shoot you. Chrystia Freeland is wise enough, clever enough, in her serpent-like way, to make it all about your protection and safety. All about your protection and safety. No, we're just trying to help you. That's why you're in shackles. You're being arrested right now for your safety. Oh, it's for the common good. Don't worry, you'll understand. I always want to say, Mrs. Freeland, can I go to the bathroom? No, you can't. And you can just imagine her taking great glee as your 4th grade self wet his pants in class, as Mrs. Freeland refuses to let you go to the bathroom. So that's kind of more diabolical than what we've seen in previous generations, and it's much more effective in a committedly polite country like Canada, because you don't know that it's happening. And because a demagogue like that, or your completely bizarre, cross-dressing prime minister, it's true, Prime Minister Blackface, I didn't wear blackface, he did. He 3 times, thank you, 3 times, and I want to thank you for your commitment to the facts. The Prime Minister, their attack on your rights, which is an attack on you and your children, is cloaked in the language of therapy, self-help, and compassion.
And, while this clown show might be entertaining to watch, Canadians are paying the price. All these liberals, not just Trudeau, all of them have helped to double housing costs, double the national debt, double the number of people forced to go to food banks, double gun crime, and now we have a prime minister who is weak and unable to govern. We need an axe the tax election so we can elect a common sense conservative government that will take back control of borders, immigration, spending, taxes, housing costs, and put Canada first.
The NDP has said very specifically that it is not willing to trigger an early election, as you have been calling for, because it believes the Conservative government is going to gut the programs that it fought for, social programs like pharmacare and dental care. Can you unequivocally tell Canadians right now, will a Conservative government cut programs like the dental care program?
Well, first of all, why wouldn't the NDP be running to win the election? If they think that Canadians support them and their promises and programs, then surely the answer would be to trigger an axe the tax election and win it. And if Jagmeet Singh wins the next election, I will respect the result. But clearly he knows that he would be rejected by the Canadian people because he has sold them out to sign on with Justin Trudeau and help double the debt, double housing costs, unleash crime and chaos in our communities. He has voted to quadruple the carbon tax, which would grind our economy to a halt and mean that food would no longer make it to our grocery stores as our trucks are no longer able to afford diesel. So what we need is an axe the tax election so common sense conservatives can bring home a government that will put people back in charge of their lives. As for these programs, well, the PharmaCare program hasn't given out a single jar of medication, a single pill. The so-called dental care program, according to the government's own numbers, has not helped 97% of people.
Well,
they have
no,
a food
1
program.
million Canadians, more than 1 million Canadians have access to that program, have received coverage to that program. 89% of dentists in this country, according to government numbers, 89% of dentists in this country have signed up for the dental care program. Would a conservative government gut those programs? Would a conservative government cut the dental care program? Can you tell the 1 million Canadians who are right now receiving coverage under that plan whether or not they will continue to have coverage under a conservative government?
So, first of all, you've revealed your own bias in simply accepting government propaganda. We don't know how many people have actually benefited from it.
Is that just because you say so, sir? Is that just because you say so? What evidence or data do you have that we cannot trust those numbers?
Oh, where do you want me to start? You could start with Monday. Were you awake on Monday? Their deficit was 55% bigger than they said 8 months ago. So we can't trust what they say on financial numbers. Their carbon tax was not supposed to go above 11 cents a liter, and the media parroted those government talking points like you are right now. And the tax is now up to 17 cents, and it's headed to 61 cents. The numbers on immigration, they tell us they can't even tell us how many people are in the country illegally. So when the government puts out a propaganda piece to the media, which then gets regurgitated without any scrutiny, claiming that they've done all of these wonderful things, I'm suspicious. I want to see the evidence. Even if it were true, what you've just admitted is that 40 million people have thus far got nothing from the program. So let's get the actual facts before Canadians, and let's make judgments based on the reality rather than on government propaganda. And that's what you're going to get from me, a government that actually looks at the real numbers and the real facts, not dishonest propaganda from Justin Trudeau and the NDP Liberals.
If anyone doubts that emergency powers can be abused, just look to Canada. As Jean Healy of Cato Institute wrote, America's neighbor to the north offers a cautionary tale about the risks that broad emergency powers could be turned inward against political dissent. In early 2022, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced a mass protest against COVID-19 restrictions, in which Canadian truckers obstructed key border crossings and effectively shut down the capital city with their rigs. Instead of simply clearing out protesters and punishing them via conventional legal means, Trudeau invoked emergency powers broad enough to permit the financial unpersoning of anyone participating in the protest. He went to their bank accounts and took their money. When people raised money voluntarily through crowdfunding to help these truckers, he stole that money as well through martial rule. Without any rule of law, he took the money. No transaction with the protesters. He took their money. People were locked up under martial law. Canada's 1988 Emergencies Act gave the Trudeau government staggering powers to subject individual protesters to debanking without due process. This is the danger of presidential power, of excessive presidential power. It isn't about any individual president, it's about all presidents of either party, because men and women will succumb to the desire for power. It's inherent in all. That's why we must have checks and balances. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland put it this way in describing Trudeau's martial law. As of February 2022, and a warning to the truckers, as of today, a bank or a financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. The government of Canada, essentially Trudeau, could freeze a bank account without a court order, without due process of law. We are today serving notice. If your truck is being used in these protests, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. Send your trailers home. And while native-born Americans may think that emergency powers are to be used to target others, I would venture to guess that the Canadian truckers protesting COVID-era mandates didn't expect that their government would treat them as foreign adversaries and freeze their accounts.
My question is regarding the housing problem. CHMC has said that Canada needs 5.8 million houses to restore the housing affordability. Liberals say that they have that already in the budget to be focused on the housing and the fairness for the Canadians, which you disagree. Why do you disagree, and what's your opinion?
Okay, I don't disagree. The math disagrees. They promised they're going to build, so they promised they're going to double home building. Their own housing agency said since they made that promise, home building has gone down, and that it will go down next year and the year after that. Look at my exchange with Trudeau in the House of Commons last week. To get to 3.9 million, forget 5.9 million, to get to 3.9 million new homes by the scheduled deadline of 2031 that Trudeau promised, he needs to build 550,000 homes a year. I asked him 6 times in the House of Commons, are we going to build 550,000 homes this year? He wouldn't answer. Well, the truth is he's on track right now to building about 200,000 homes. Not even half of what he's promised. It's not a matter of me disagreeing. It's a mathematical fact. He's not delivering. It's a mathematical fact that 9 years ago when I was housing minister, the average rent for a one-bedroom was $973. Now it's $2,000. Right? These are the facts. So has he spent a lot of money on housing programs? Yes. He spent $89 billion on housing affordability, and the result is that housing costs have doubled. The problem is he's putting the money into bureaucracy. Government bureaucrats don't build homes. Private sector builders do. Government bureaucrats are in the way. So we need to get the government bureaucracy out of the way and deliver fast, affordable permits to build the homes. 1/3 of the cost of every newly built home in Ontario is government permits and taxes. 1/3. That's more than we spend on the labor to build the home. So we're spending more on the bureaucrats who don't build anything than we do on the carpenters, framers, plumbers, and electricians who build. Isn't that insane? Like when you buy a house, do you not find it incredible? You have this beautiful house, and you say, well, where did the money, I'm buying the house for, now it's $1 million. What does the $1 million go to? You know, you break it down, lumber, materials. You think more money goes to people sitting in government offices than goes to the people swinging the hammers, fitting the pipes, framing the lumber. It doesn't make sense. We need to cut the bureaucracy, and that's why my common sense plan will require cities free up land, speed up permits, cut development charges and fees as a condition of getting federal funds. If they don't hit my targets, they won't get their money, and there'll be less of those bureaucrats in those corner offices. So if they beat the target, they'll get more money. We're going to pay our municipalities the way we pay realtors and builders for the number of homes.
Today brings new sordid details about the employment minister's scandal. And yesterday we learned that his company shares a mailing address with an international drug trafficker who's been busted for cocaine not once, but twice. He's been caught out in falsehoods, caught faking Indigenous identity to try to secure government contracts meant for real Indigenous people, and his company is under investigation for 9 fraud-related counts. Why on earth has the Prime Minister not fired this man?
Mr. Speaker, as I said yesterday, I don't know the person referred to in that article. I've never met that person. It's stated in the article, Mr. Speaker.
Yesterday, the fall economic statement confirmed what former finance minister, the budget officer, and the Globe and Mail already told us, that this weak and now wounded Prime Minister hijacked the statement to drive Canada through the fiscal guardrail and over a cliff. $62 billion in overspending. That's 50% higher than their own target set just months ago. They told us over and over again that the deficit wouldn't exceed $40 billion. Simple question. Why did they mislead Canadians again?
Yeah, way to go,
The Honourable Minister of Finance and for Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, far from misleading Canadians, the government thinks it's important to be transparent in terms of the fiscal picture of the government. That's why, Mr. Speaker, based on legal advice and accounting practices, the government booked contingent liabilities that increase the initial deficit projection to the level that my colleague referred to. Mr. Speaker, this is about righting historical wrongs with Indigenous peoples, something the previous government, Conservative government, ignored. And Mr. Speaker, we think the responsible thing to do is to be transparent with Canadians. That's exactly what we did.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, of the Liberal ministers that still remain, not a single one would stick around yesterday to even defend the statement. They dropped it here and then ran out the door. $62 billion of new debt and new inflationary spending for Canadians to pay on their grocery bills, on their home heating, and on everything else. That's equivalent to spending $1 every second for nearly 2,000 years. The Prime Minister has clearly lost control of his caucus. He's lost control of his cabinet. He's now lost control of spending. So when will he give Canadians the chance to weigh in and call a carbon tax election?
That's right.
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to learn from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. On the eve of Christmas, what we presented to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, it's no time for slogan. It's no time for smiles, Mr. Speaker. This is time for us to be serious. What the Minister of Finance presented yesterday was a fall economic statement which is focused on growth, investment in our workers, investment in our industry, and investment in Canada. Mr. Speaker, you know what? Because confident countries invest in themselves, something that the Conservative could not understand. We'll stand for Canadians, we'll stand for Canada on this side of the House.
Mr. Trudeau is being held in office by one man, Jagmeet Singh. A fifth of Liberal MPs have written a letter for him to resign. His deputy prime minister has walked out on him. His housing minister has quit. That on top of numerous other female ministers who stormed out after his appalling mistreatment and abuse and dishonesty towards them. 80% of Canadians have lost confidence in this prime minister. So why is Jagmeet Singh making the entire country wait for him to get his pension? That is the question today.
He can go ahead and try to shame us and try to call us names, but the reality is that his reign of power there is massively fragile. And when you pull back the cloak of what indeed he has accomplished in Canada, it is nothing that has brought Canadians any form of progression whatsoever. I hold no respect for that.
I met another guy at the Labrat Brewery a few days ago, and you can watch the video of me talking with him. He walked up to me and he said, I have 3 jobs and I can't make it. We're renting. We have no hope. We've given up on ever owning a home. We're renting. We can barely make it. And he said to me, I feel ashamed when I talk to my kids because they ask me why I'm never around and why we can never have a house. And I feel like a failure. But he didn't fail. He has been failed.
That's right.
He has been robbed of the promise of Canada. It was a very simple promise. That if you worked hard, you got a good life. Now, it wasn't fancy or extravagant, but you got a house with a yard where you could have kids playing safely. And you could have a nice dog that you could afford to feed along with the kids. And your kids could play safely in the streets. That was the promise. Now, politicians break promises all the time.
But you know what was bad about this promise? This promise didn't belong to this prime minister. It wasn't his promise to break.
Yep.
It belonged to all of us.
And that is exactly right. Now, you could hear that same speech coming out of the mouth of somebody to the left. But people on the left will then say it's the government's job to provide you the house, the dog, and the wealth. And you have no obligations in turn. That's not what Poilievre is saying. He is saying that the dream is that if you act responsibly and dutifully, you will get ahead.
When I hear these poor fools talking about global warming, they don't call it that anymore. They call it climate change because, you know, some parts of the planet are cooling and warming. It didn't work. So they finally got it right. They call it, they just call it climate change. They used to call it global warming. You know, years ago, they used to call it global cooling. In the 1920s, they thought the planet was going to freeze. Now they think the planet's going to burn up. And we're still waiting for the 12 years. You know, we're down almost to the end of the 12-year period. You understand that, where these lunatics that know nothing, they predict, they said, we have 12 years to live. And people didn't have babies because they said, we only have another. No, it's so crazy. But the problem isn't the fact that the oceans in 500 years will raise a quarter of an inch. The problem is nuclear weapons. It's nuclear warming. And these poor fools talk about global warming all the time. You know, the planet's going to global warm to a point where the oceans will rise an eighth of an inch in 355 years. You know, they have no idea what's going to happen to weather. And in the meantime, we're spending our wealth on this foolish stuff.
About a week ago, Justin Trudeau admitted that he broke our immigration system. And that brings new challenges. His own published documents show there are 4.9 million people here temporarily that are supposed to leave by December 31st of next year, 13 months from now. 4.9 million people. We asked what the plan was to track their departures, and yesterday his immigration minister said, we're just going to take people at their word. He admits that there have been 2 ISIS terrorists allowed into our country. What is the plan to protect our security and reinstate sovereignty over who is in our country?
When I travel across this country, I consistently meet 2 types of people. One, those who are a little better off and tell me that, and I'll be very blunt about this, that if I don't win, they will leave the country. And they are very numerous. Yes. But you know, I don't worry about them as much. You know who I worry about? The ones who can't leave. The ones who don't know, and if I can just use very blunt language, who tell me I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I have no idea how I'm going to pay my way.
That's right.
I met a waitress at a restaurant not long ago, and she came up to me and she grabbed me by the hand and she said, you have to win. And I said, oh, thank you, I appreciate your support. She said, no, it wasn't a compliment. You have to win. And then she told me her story. She told me that she was working 1 full-time job and 2 part-time jobs just to pay her bills. As a single woman in her late 50s. And she was tired of working all the time. So she cut everything out of her budget. Every creature comfort, everything she enjoyed about her life, she cut it out so that she could drop one of those part-time jobs. And then one morning, she woke up and she walked outside and her car was gone. And she called her insurance and they said they weren't going to cover the replacement value. So she had to take that job back because she simply cannot live her life without a car. Now you can bet your bottom dollar the guy who stole the car, he was probably out on bail. This was not his first job.
That's right.
Her taxes have gone up. Her heating bill has gone up. Her wages have not gone up. She's scared to go out in the streets in places where they didn't even lock the door not long ago. These are the people we're fighting for. These silly games over here, they're very entertaining. The soap opera that everyone's seized with today, that's all fine. But there are real people whose lives are on the line here, and we have a duty to work for them. And quite frankly, this woman doesn't see me as any, or any of us as any kind of savior. They see us all as a last hope. In fact, she doesn't want to be saved. She just wants her life back. She was taking care of herself just fine before her tax, her heat, her grocery bill went through the roof and her car went missing. She was doing just fine. She was doing everything right. Met another guy at the Labrat Brewery a few days ago, and you can watch the video of me talking with him. He walked up to me and he said, I have 3 jobs and I can't make it. We're renting. We have no hope. We've given up on ever owning a home. We're renting. We can barely make it. And he said to me, I feel ashamed when I talk to my kids because they ask me why I'm never around and why we can never have a house. And I feel like a failure. But he didn't fail. He has been failed.
That's right.
He has been robbed of the promise of Canada. It was a very simple promise, that if you worked hard, you got a good life. Now, it wasn't fancy or extravagant, but you got a house with a yard where you could have kids playing safely, and you could have a nice dog that you could afford to feed along with the kids, and your kids could play safely in the streets. That was the promise. Now, politicians break promises all the time, but you know what was bad about this promise? This promise didn't belong to this Prime Minister. It wasn't his promise to break. It belonged to all of us. And our purpose is to bring home that promise for that young man, that young father, and that older female worker so that they can once again take back control of their lives, live in a safe country where their hard work earns them a good wage, where their rent and their food is affordable, and where when they go to bed at night, they know that they will be safe throughout their sleep and that they will have their car in their driveway in the morning. A country where people are proud again to fly the flag, where they know the government is a servant and not a master, where they understand that every day the Commons, this place, works for the common people, not for the ego of one man desperate to cling on to his job. We must remember that we are servants in this place. We have a job to do on behalf of the people who sent us here. Our personal dramas are not important. The dramas that should seize all of our concern and imagination are the daily dramas of the working women and men that build this country. We are in it for them. We're going to give them back control of their lives in the freest country on earth, Canada. Let's bring it home.